Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I am so excited to share with you a light summer seasonal color analysis makeup tutorial. This is one of my favorite almost everyday or day to night makeup looks. This is something that you can tone a little bit more up on the eyes to make it a little bit more smoky, a little bit more nighttime, or you can soften anything down to make it a little bit more daytime when you just want something that's going to enhance your natural feature. Without further hesitation, let's get into creating this light summer color palette makeup look. I've already completed my complexion makeup off camera, and for the light summer seasonal color palette, do your complexion makeup however makes you feel best. Ideally, you want your undertone to be neutral to cool and undertone, but there's some flexibility, so do what works for you, and then we will move into the color categories. First thing I'm going to do is prep my lips with a little bit of a balm, and I'm so excited to share with you a new product. I purchased this last week when I was at the MAC store. This is called the GlowPlay TenderTalk Lip Balm in the shade 465. It caught my attention on the display because I'm like, oh, that's really cute, a purple balm. But the sales associate had me try it on and I was sold. The MAC GlowPlay TenderTalk Balm, I love it. It gives an immediate burst of hydration to the lips. There's several different shades. I really love the shade Vibe, which is a really cute pastel purple. Perfect for our late summer seasonal color palette. Gives the lips a nice boost of moisture, so it's great for prepping the lips like I am today. But if you want to retouch without fussing with a lipstick or a lip gloss, this would be a great addition to keep in your bag. I want to start adding some color to my face because right now I've got a lip balm on and I've got my complexion makeup on. I don't really have any type of color or dimension going, so things are very flat. And if I do my eyes at this point, I feel like I might go too far. I know for this look I want something that I can kind of take from day to night, and I'm working with the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette, one of my favorite palettes for the light summer seasonal color palette. Neutral to cool undertone palette. You do have a few warmer shades here in the top of the palette, but for the most part you have these really beautiful pastel pink purple shades, which are just so great for accentuating the light summer color palette. This would teeter also into the cool true summer color palette. Cool true winter or even bright clear winter could do with this palette, but I feel like the shades and how muted some of the more transitional or mid-tone shades are really play well with the summer color palette. If you are more of a cool true winter, then be careful with some of these more mid-tone shades, because the shades Quartz, Aura, and Gratitude, as well as the shade Energized and Self-Love. So these three, this shade and this shade, they do pull warmer. So for a cool true seasonal color palette, meaning cool true winter or cool true summer, they're going to be a little too warm and throw the overall harmony of the color palettes off. But for one of your more transitional, so light summer or soft muted summer, you could get away with them. So that's the color palette I'm working with. I know I want that to be my main feature, so let me build my cheek makeup and then I can build my eyes from there to make sure they keep the intensity. I am going to start off with a little bit of highlight, and I want my highlight to be slightly warmer because we are in the summer seasons here in the calendar year. It is the end of June, so I want to add a shot of warmth. So I'm using the MAC Extra Dimension Skinfinish in the shade Double-Gleam. Neutral, warm, soft gold. And I'm applying it under all of my cheek products, so that way I get a little bit of warm and a little bit of light, because warmer tones do reflect light slightly more efficiently than a cooler tone. Say for instance, like if you're using a gold highlighter versus a silver highlight, the gold is going to reflect light a little bit more because warmer tones tend to push farther forward, where cooler undertones tend to pull back a little bit. I like to kind of play with the juxtaposition of warm and cool with one of these more transitional color palettes. So a little bit of a warmer highlight. This is going to add a nice beam of light to the top of the cheekbone. And when we apply it under our bronzer and our blush, it's just going to add that lit from within glow. This formula is slightly more reflective than I would go for a traditional summer seasonal color palette makeup, but with with light summer sitting on that border of light spring. Light spring is a higher contrast, higher white balanced color palette. So I'm gonna borrow from that color palette to play up some of the contrast, the white backing, and a little bit of warmth just to create a little bit more visual interest in the look. And that is also a way you can kind of play with your color palette, tiptoe in some of the shades from your neighboring color palette. So with light summer, I can play with the light spring, or cool true summer like my top is going to be a little bit more into the cool true summer spectrum, where this highlighter I just applied is going to be a little bit more on the light spring. And we're going to tie it all together with the rest of the colors we apply. Next, I add a little bit of a bronzer, and when you're shopping for a bronzer for the summer color palettes, it can be a little tricky because a lot of bronzers run warm. Thankfully, cooler tone bronzers or more rosy bronzers are becoming more readily available. One of my favorites, and a great example of a more neutral, muted, rosy bronzer that works well for fair to light skin tones, is from Gucci Beauty. This is a really beautiful, more rosy brown shade. But if you're someone who leans more on the cool tone side versus the neutral cool tone side, you might find a shade like this too warm. When you put it on your skin, you might feel like it starts looking a little orange, a little muddy. One of my other favorite options is to buy a powder foundation 2 to 3 shades deeper than your skin tone. You are going to have the same undertone as your skin, but you're going to have a little bit more depth. So this is the MAC Studio Fix powder foundation in the shade in 4. Right now, this shade isn't quite deep enough for me to use as a bronzer, but you can kind of see it right here. In the winter when I am at my fairest, this is a really great shade for my skin tone. In 4 is a rosy beige undertone, and it is labeled as a neutral, but I find it leans a little bit more neutral cool. So if you are someone in MAC shade ranges and you are somewhere between an NW10 and an NW, I would say 18 in 4 might work as a good bronzing shade for you. If you want something a little bit more rosy, then consider going to like an NW25, NW30 in the MAC Studio Fix powder plus foundation range. Another option you can use is a more muted rosy blush. The one I have here is from Gucci Beauty. This is the Rosy Beige 05 blush. This is a really nice satin formula. I think they call it a satin matte formula. On the back of my hand, you can see, compared to the Gucci bronzer, this is going to be a little bit more of a rosy apricot brown, where Rosy Beige, it's going to have a little bit more of a muted rose undertones. Applied with a very light hand and a large fluffy brush, we are going to create the effect of a bronzed glow to the skin without going too orange. For my skin tone, used with a traditional blush brush or bronzer brush, Rosy Beige can have a little too much color impacts. I like to choose a more fluffy brush, something that has a little bit more flexibility and is a little bit more flimsy. BK Beauty number 103 bronzer brush and the IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe number 8 wand ball brush. Between the two, the IT Cosmetics has this pointed tip, which is going to allow it to be a little bit softer within the application. I've already applied my all over setting powder, so that means there's a little bit of powder left in the bristles of the brush, which is going to help to further diffuse the shade. Picking up the blush, I just want to pick up a little bit, work it off on the back of my hand, and then start high on the back half of the cheekbone, work forward, overlap your highlight, and then pull a little bit just into the hairline. Bronzer is to mimic warmth from the sun. If we think about how the sun hits us, the sun is overhead. That means it's gonna hit the high point. So forehead, cheek, bridge the nose, and the chin. Find that hollow. If you want to, you can put your finger there, and you're gonna work just above and then buff onto the forehead, and then you can take a little bit on the nose, a little bit on the chin. We are gonna repeat on the other side. So pick up your powder, knock off the excess, start in the back. I like to blend into the hairline, and that will pick up a lot of your product. If you have lighter hair, then be careful. You might want to put like 2 fingers right here, so that way if you have light blonde hair, white hair, gray hair, you're not getting too much of that color kind of staining your hair. And then work forward, work up, blend into the forehead. And if you're someone who doesn't fall into the light summer color palette and you just don't like bronzers, or you have a blush that gives you a really pretty sun-kissed effect, go ahead, try this out. You can use your products in so many different ways. Now, something I like to do, even though we're gonna apply eyeshadow, I wanna keep my look feeling cohesive. I am going to take a small fluffy eyeshadow brush. This is rephr number 14. I'm going to first start by taking my MAC highlighters, Extra Dimension Skinfinish in the shade Double-Gleam. I'm going to take a little bit of this here, just on the inner corner of my eye, add a little pop of light, and I want to add just a teeny tiny bit right here under the arch of my eyebrow. And since we've been applying a few products, if you're someone who likes to add a little bit more light to the center of the face, then you can apply it a little bit here on bridge of the nose, tip of the nose, a little bit here on the cupid's bow, and a little bit on the ball of the chin. And also, look at this balm. Look at this beautiful lilac pink shade it's changed to. This reminds me so much of the new Dior lip glow in the shade pink lilac. The shade looks like this. The lip balm goes on a similar shade. So if you like the look of the Dior pink lilac lip glow, but you don't want to spend Dior pricing, check out the MAC. We're going to take a detour from our cheeks. I am going to give my lips a quick blot. As much as I love this lip balm, I just want to give it a little blot because I want to put my lip color on. When I'm thinking about the order of how much contrast I want, or where I want the visual interest of my eye look to be, I want the eyes to have the most intensity. I want my lips to be somewhere between a mid-tone and the lightest tone, and that means I need it to balance out with my cheek color. So I want to go ahead and put my lip color on, so that way I can kind of gauge how intense I want my blush to be. The lip pencil I'm going to use is one of my new favorite everyday shades. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Lip Cheat in the shade Pillow Talk Fair. It's a light muted pink, and it is surprisingly cool toned, and it's fascinating because where my lips do have a little bit more of a rosy hue to them, this can sometimes feel a little bit more on the gray pink side. Charlotte Tilbury lipstick in the shade Pillow Talk Fair. Compared to the lip liner, the lipstick does have a touch more warm. I feel like Pillow Talk Fair might be a little too warm for a cool, true summer, but for either light summer or soft muted summer, this is really pretty. Although I feel like for soft muted summer, the original Pillow Talk shade is so beautiful. I might add a little bit something on top of it later to further tone the shade, but for now, I'm gonna leave it here. Let's get some blush on, and then we'll put our eyes on. The blush I'm gonna use today is one that I have to admit, it does intimidate me, but that's why I want to share it with you today. This is the Givenchy Prisme Libre blush, and this is the shade 1 Mousseline Lilas. So it comes with a little sponge, which I never use, and inside you have the 4 quadrants. So you have almost like a blue-based pink lilac, you have a fuchsia, slightly warmer pink, and a lighter pastel pink. I'm going to work with a small amount from the cap of the product. I'm going to use my favorite fluffy blush brush. This is the IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe French Boutique Blush Brush number 4. And when I'm working on my product, I almost like to think about the Bare Minerals infomercials. I'm going to swirl my brush in, making sure I swirl both clockwise and counterclockwise, and then I'm going to tap my brush off. I want this loose product to be really well distributed through my brush, and then I'm going to start by taking off some of the excess product on my hand, and then I'm gonna start working through. What I love about this formula is it goes on starting to look like it's a little bit more sheer, but you can build up the color intensity. It almost feels like when you give it just a moment to kind of soak into the skin, it almost brightens up a little bit. Get it close to where you want it, and then move on to the other side. And I'm overlapping that bronzer and a highlight shade we applied, so that way you can get a really beautiful tie together, because I had my highlighter here, the bronzer's here, my blusher is swirl right between each other, so that way you have a gradient of all 3 tones. They look very cohesive and natural because the summer color palette is more of a lower contrast color palette. I don't want to have any type of stripes. I want everything to feel very soft, very diffused. That is so, it doesn't feel like a lot, but if we look from my left side to the right side, you can just see we have a little bit of that glow, and it's really helping to harmonize and pull the lip color into the rest of the face, even though we don't have any eye makeup on yet. Let me know, have any of you tried these Givenchy Prisme Libre brushes before? I think it's shade number 2, the slightly more neutral warm pink. I think that shade's really, really beautiful, but I've not bought it yet because the shade I have, I find slightly intimidating. So what are your thoughts? Is this a blush formula that you've tried and you love, or let me know what you think. Using it now in this capacity, I have to say it's making me want to reach for it a lot more often. A little bit on the bridge of my nose, and I like to put a little bit of blush on my nose, forehead, and chin, because anytime you're a lighter skin tone, or you're someone who's more prone to getting a sunburn versus a suntan, when you get a little bit of warmth or a kiss from the sun like you're going to mimic with your bronzer, there's always going to be a little bit of a warmth. So I like to take a little bit of my blusher shade and run it just over the high points to tie in my blush. And I realized I did not finish my train of thought earlier when I was talking about using that smaller eyeshadow brush. So real quick, I'm going to take whatever is left on my blush brush, run it through the top of my socket. So if you're using a blush brush, find the edge of your brush. So if you're using more of an angled brush, it's a little bit easier. But if you have a more rounded blush brush, you'll still have a point where it starts to taper. Use that edge of your brush, set it right in the socket of your eye, and let that little tiny bit of blush left on your brush transfer. This is going to help tie in your overall eye look into your cheek look. And for some people, if you were in a rush, you could put your highlighter all over your eyelid, put a little bit of your blush as like a transitional tone in your socket, and then add your bronzer or your contour shade as your socket shade, put on some mascara, and you're good to go on a quick day. When you're doing more of a comprehensive eye look like we're going to do, using these same shades in your overall eye makeup, and I like to put them on first as like a backing, it's going to help create a more cohesive look. Now I'm just gonna go back to my bronzer shade in that tiny little brush, take just a little bit, I'm gonna remove most on the back of my hand, and I'm gonna run this right here in the crease. I like to angle my brush up so that way it makes my eyes look a little bit larger, and almost circle up and out towards the temple, help lift and elongate my eye shape. Adding this right here, I feel like it just makes the eye look feel so much more done than it did with just the other shades. Next, I'm gonna take a large fluffy crease brush. This has no product on it. I just want to go over, smooth over the bronzer and the highlight, tie that in together, and now we are ready to move in with our eyeshadow. Huda Beauty Rose Quartz. A lot of the Huda Beauty larger palettes have these more jelly-like shadows. In this palette, it's called Love Stone. It's like a clear, almost like a Vaseline texture with these little pigment pearls in it. I like to use it as an eyelid basic because it adds like a great tacky layer to the eyelid. So I'm gonna start by tapping this just on the eyelid. So going from your lash line to the inner corner, right up to where you applied your bronzer. This is going to help you maximize your usage in an eyeshadow palette like this, and it's going to add just an extra little oomph to your eyeshadows. I want to think about the colors I'm wearing, the shades I've used in my makeup, what I want to accentuate. I want to start by adding a little bit more warmth to my eyes. I want to use a mix of Gratitude, which is more of like a mid-tone rosy brown, and I'm going to use the shade Radiate, which is a little bit more of a lavender taupe shade. Rephr number 16, this is a slightly oversized but tapered socket brush. Using the mix of these two, the shade Gratitude, which is slightly warmer and rosier, is going to add a little bit more warmth. In the shade Radiate, which is a slightly cooler, more taupey lilac shade, it's going to help contour and push back. So between the two, something a little bit more neutral, and I'm just going to generously wipe it and run it right through my socket line, back and forth, back and forth. When you feel like it, you can add a few large circular motions, back and forth, back and forth. Now, in your everyday, you don't need to mix together eyeshadow shades. And when you find a handful of eyeshadows that work for you, stick with it. Your makeup should be something that is easy. You shouldn't have to think too much about it. Even when you're someone who owns a lot of makeup like I do, someone who generally loves having selection, you should still have some things that you can just grab and go in a hurry. Or you should have things like this where all the different shades work for you on their own, but but you can further the number of shades that you have by mixing together some shades. Have fun in your day off, because sometimes mixing colors isn't the most intuitive thing. I wouldn't say trying a new shade combination when you've got to be somewhere in 15 minutes. Maybe do it one night before you take your makeup off and just experiment, mix together your shades, because where we are in the light summer color palette, you can teeter into some slightly warmer shades from the late spring palette, or you can go into those slightly cooler, more icy tones from the cool true summer palette. Mixing together some of those shades to create something more neutral, or mixing those with one of your more cool neutral shades from late summer, you can just kind of customize and really play with things. Have fun, experiment. And by mixing those two shades and layering them on top of my cheek colors, I'm creating the shade that's almost like a, I want to say muddy, but muddy is not the most beautiful, attractive word that I'm wanting to, but it's creating a transitional warmth that is playing off the color of my top, and we're creating a really beautiful color harmony. The shade Joy, which is this really beautiful metallic pink, and I'm just gonna use my finger and tap that right over my eyelid. This is going to be a little more intense than what I want the end product to be, but if I layer something with a little bit more oomph under something a little bit more subdued, you're just going to create a little bit more visual interest. And since we've already got our base makeup done, applying it over top of this tacky base is going to help eliminate some of the fallout. It's almost like how a glitter glue works. It's a little bit more tacky, so when these more shimmery reflective particles touches it, it kind of grips on. Next, I'm gonna take my fluffy crease brush, and I'm gonna use the shade Self Love, which is a mix of this like off-white and pale gold. Mixing the two shades together, I'm gonna layer right on top of the shimmery pink that we just applied, and this is going to help mute it down a little bit. Now I want to use a little bit of eyeliner, and for my eyeliner, I don't want anything precise. I'm using my Too Faced Better Than Sex eyeliner in the chocolate brown shade, and I'm just going to apply a little bit of a line, nothing precise, because I'm going to go over top and smudge it out. And since I'm wanting to do more of a smudgy liner, I'm going to do one side, buff it out, and then move to the other side. So now that I have that on, I want to add a little bit more of a cool reflect to the eye. So I'm going to use this deep purple shade called Empowered with a small pencil brush. This is a rephr number 23. And I want to tilt my chin up, look down, stretch the eyelid, and I am going to start buffing right over top of that liquid eyeliner. Once I have less product on my brush, I want to take anything that's left and then do any little extensions I randomly do. So if I want to elongate the shape of the shadow, I can do that to create a little bit more of like an elongated wing, or I can pull it a little bit further. Take my concealer brush. This doesn't have any additional product, whatever I had on earlier, and I can just go right under and clean up any little mistakes to make sure everything is going in the direction that I want it to. So I like to go from under my lash line and just pull up to the tail of my brow to give it a little lift. And then I like to take my powder brush and just tap right over. For mascara, you want to go with ideally more of a neutral taupey brown. I'm just gonna use a plain brown. So this is the Essence Lash Princess Mascara in the shade Black Brown. Build my mascara up until my heart is content. So once I have my eyeshadow on and my mascara on, sometimes if you're like me, I always manage to get a little bit of mascara transfer just when I'm applying it. So remove it the best that you can, and then I'm gonna go back in with my small blending eyeshadow brush, and I'm gonna use the shade Gratitude on its own. If you want to, and you want to get a little bit more creative, I mean, you can mix it with the shade that we applied on top of the pink and tap it off, and I'm gonna run it right under my lower lash line just to tie in my eyelid and create a little bit more visual interest. Now, something I like to do, this is not a must, but I like to take a pink powder just a little bit under my eye. This will help to clean up any possible eyeshadow fall down, but also brighten the area. And I always like to take a little bit here, right on the bridge of my nose. And this is almost act like a reverse nose contour. It's gonna brighten up and it's gonna make the cheek feel just a pinch wider, and it just makes it feel like the cheek goes a little bit further in, and it's gonna help to just almost slim down the nose by creating the illusion that your cheek is a bit further in than it is. And I like to take my powder brush, dust right over, but sometimes these light pink powders can put a little bit of like a pinkish veil on the skin, which would be a little too abrupt for anything going on in natural daylight. Take a step back, look side to side. Is your cheek color where you want it? Is your lip color where you want it? I want to add a little bit more cheek color. So now I'm going to go back to my Givenchy blush. And I'm going to repeat the same steps. So working the product into my brush, clockwise, counterclockwise, then working off the back of my hand. I'm going to go back on top of the cheekbone just to brighten it up. I'm feeling like I might want to add just a pop of color to the lips, and today I went to MAC and I purchased the GlowPlay Balm. The reason I was going is because MAC is having their 40th anniversary. Can you believe MAC has been around for 40 years? They brought back a few of their iconic lipstick shades, and I purchased one of my favorite MAC lipsticks that was sadly discontinued, the MAC Cremesheen lipstick in the shade Hot Gossip. Light summer, cool summer, true summer, soft muted summer, great everyday pink shade. So I'm gonna go right on top of my Pillow Talk hair, and that just adds that nice boost of pink to the lips, and I'm so glad MAC brought back Hot Gossip. Even though sadly it's limited edition, I've got one in my collection. My initial thought was maybe I'll get a backup. We don't need that. Too many other products to have backups in my collection. If you're not new to my channel, this will not be a surprise, but if you are new, I always like to finish off my looks with a little bit of fragrance, and I like to work in fragrance to my seasonal color palettes because they just flow together so easily. And for the light summer color palette, we're coming out of spring into summer, and that makes me think of light, fresh, almost sparkling florals, mixes of floral and fruit. Think about something like rose and raspberries with a little bit of a sparkling quality. Two of my favorites are the Maison Francis Kurkdjian L'Eau à la Rose and Bulgari Rose Goldia Blossom Delight. Both of these are Eau de Toilette, so you don't have to use an Eau de Toilette, but the overall feeling of the fragrance just really plays into the overall feeling and the charm of the light summer color palette. Both of these fragrances are happiness in the bottle. I don't know how it is where you are, but now here in Toronto, it is so warm, so humid, and these are like sensory drinks of water. They're just very lightweight, very refreshing, and they go with all of the fun outfits I want to wear that fall into my seasonal color palette. I really hope you enjoyed today's light summer seasonal color palette makeup look. I had so much fun doing this. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do seasonal color analysis, and for the winter color palettes and the spring color palettes, I did one video to kind of create a amalgamation of all three sub palettes into one look. Summer is the seasonal color palette I fall into, so I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to do a video for light summer, cool true summer, and then one for soft muted summer, and then just do one video to encompass all of autumn's color palette. So if you like this format, let me know, and then next year I will do all three sub palettes again, because I know a lot of you have really enjoyed that in the previous 2 years. So let me know your thoughts. If you found this helpful, enjoyable, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment with any thoughts you have. Let me know if you've tried any of these products, or if there's anything that you just want to try out for yourself. I love your comments, and the comments on the seasonal color palette videos are just always so wonderful. So thank you all for your continued love and support, and I hope you have a really beautiful rest of the day wherever it is you are in the world. Until next time, I will see you later. Bye, y'all.